Welcome to this snapshot video, which is going to teach you how to create both a competitive and profitable pricing strategy for your fashion brand. So a pricing strategy should be something that you review seasonally for your fashion brand and 100% for every time that you launch onto a new channel and into a new market. And the reason why is because how you price your product will be a factor as to whether or not they sell or not. So pricing is critical. So you need to make sure that your products are accurately priced based on their worth, based on their perceived value, as well as to suit your own profit needs. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the steps that you need to take to ensure that you are not only profitable via your pricing strategy, but you're also competitive, therefore appealing to your customer base globally. So the steps I'm going to walk you through are applicable for two types of people. So they're applicable for fashion brands that are wanting to set a global pricing strategy for wholesale expansion, and they are applicable for fashion brands just starting out that don't know how to competitively price their product. So let's get stuck into step one. So step one, the first stage is to look at the competitiveness of your pricing. So we're going to do a competitor analysis. So if you're a brand, you're actually comparing your price point by category versus your competitors. And if you're not a brand, you're going to find the entry and exit price point by category to give you a framework, to give you a guideline in which to work within. So let me show you now exactly how to do that. So this is a pricing comparison table. So I encourage you to create one exactly the same. So pretty much what this does, this section here that I'm spinning over, if you have a brand, you'd enter your price point here. If you don't, obviously don't do that. And then you're entering your competitors. You're finding your competitors in the specific market you're selling in. So if you're selling into the UK from Australia, you'd be looking at your competitors overseas. If you're looking at a pricing strategy for your own market, again, you'd be looking for the competitors directly selling in the same market as you. So discover who they are, enter their names in here, and you're going to be finding their price point. So how you do this, here you can see departments. So that's pretty much categories. So assuming you sell women's wear, we'd be looking at what categories do you sell? Denim, skirts, jackets, knitwear, etc. You would list them here in this side. Then simply what you're doing is you're going onto either your own website, you're looking at the entry price point and the exit price point by category. So say if you sell t-shirts, you sell the cheapest is $20, the most expensive is $50. That would be your entry and exit. You do the exact same for every single category for all of your competitors. So here you'll see in the table, you've got Aussie dollar, you've got the GBP, and you've got the euro. So pretty much dependent on what you're trying to find out. So are you just doing a pricing strategy for Australia because that's the only country that you're selling in right now? Or is this a wholesale pricing strategy? Therefore, you're looking at what you're interested in the UK market. Therefore, you're also looking up the Aussie price as well as the GB price so that you have both comparisons. So dependent on what market you're selling into, this is where you would look at the currency in that market by category of your competitors. So pretty much, once you have filled in this table, so of competitor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many, what this first section, this is the most important, this will then start to make a comparison. Great. So I've just quickly shown you how to do the basic first step, which is simply entering in the price points of your competitors into a table. Next, the reason why we're doing this is the most important factor, step 2. So now you need to analyze what this data is actually telling you. So again, if you're an existing brand, you need to look at the summary, the average table, and look at the average price point and see if you can increase or decrease your price points to be more competitive. Or if you're a new brand, therefore you've got no pricing right now, you're literally looking at the data to see what the entry and exit price point is per category of your competitors, which will give you a guideline of which to price your product between to ensure you're competitive. So now you've got the basic bit, let's actually look at the data and what this means. So here we go, back to the table. So pretty much as mentioned, you've filled this bit in. What we're now looking at is this section. This is the most important. So all this is doing is looking at the average price point of either you, your brand, as well as your competitors, or just your competitors. So here we can see, for example, I've just written the word shirt. Let's say we were comparing shirts. You can see that the entry is $45, the exit is $75. Therefore, you now have a competitive framework to work between. If you want to be competitive, you know it has to be cheaper than $75. And if you want to be even more competitive, you could price yours just beneath $45 as an entry price point. So this gives you a framework to work between. So now, if you actually already have price points for your brand and say you're looking at global pricing strategy, you can now look at shirt, for example, and you can now see that your brand, your entry price point was actually $50 versus your competitors' average, which was $45. Therefore, could you now consider pricing a little bit lower to ensure you are competitive? And the same question would go for the exit price point. Here we can see yours is 90, but actually the average is 75. Therefore, you're more expensive than everybody else. Therefore, could you consider lowering your price point? What would that mean to your profit? So these pretty much are the questions you need to ask yourself, and then you need to start to build this new framework of price points based on the average of your competitors. Pretty much what I encourage you to do now is to focus on the price points that you're going to be selling in and start to write them into a table, and always keep this at the back of your mind when you're designing product, when you're selling product, therefore when you've priced the product. Great, so that's step 2 complete. So now you have a comparison. You know an entry and exit price point. You know you are competitive by category in your fashion brand. Step 3 is to gain your operational costs. So it's either going to be quotes if you're a startup, you haven't launched yet, or it's going to be actual costs if you're a fashion brand. And this is now where we're going to progress into checking if you're profitable. So one tip I recommend, I've got this great blog post, which is how to sell into new markets, which will give you pointers on the UK, Europe, US, as well as Australia, so that you can understand more around costs of going into new markets. But pretty much what you need right now, the operational costs, are listed on the screen. So cost of goods is COGS, so the actual cost of the garment itself. Duty in whatever country you're going into, VAT taxes for whatever country you're going into, the freight, the storage, warehouse costs, labeling costs, packaging. So this is every single cost involved in producing, shipping, and delivering that product. You now need to know these to actually find out if your pricing is going to be both competitive as well as profitable. So let me show you this step. So now we've moved into a different table. So this table is now going to look at your specific line by line collection, your products. So I'm obviously making these up for this, but the Carly shirt. So this specific shirt, we would refer back to the pricing analysis that you've done. So here, and we can see that your proposed competitive price points were 45 and 85. That's what you need to price your product at to be competitive versus your competitors. So here we can see the Carly shirt is at 80, so it's towards the top end. It's an expensive shirt. What you now need to do is to enter your COGS and all of the costs into a spreadsheet similar to this. So pretty much your retail price, the price that you want to sell it at because you think you're being competitive, you think the product's worth that price point. You need to know the actual cost of goods. You need to then know the freight, the additional costs, anything else around the packaging, all of those costs that I listed on the other sheet. You now need to enter these here, and you need to then, column by column, it's going to calculate what the landed margin is. So that's this column here. So take your cost price, add your freight, shipping costs, duty, in this case, it's not applicable, additional costs, packaging, labels, etc. And then actually calculate the total cost of that individual style, that shirt, Carly shirt. This is the total cost it's going to cost you to make it, to ship it, to deliver it. And now what you're looking at is how much margin, how much profit are you going to make if it cost you £40 and you're going to sell it at 80. So here we can see it's pretty much 50%. That's the margin you're going to make. And I can tell you right now that that's not going to make you profit, well, that much profit. If you're just selling your product via your own direct consumer, therefore there's no additional cost. You are just purely selling via your website. You're not shipping anywhere else. There's no wholesale deals, commission, etc. If you're okay to accept a 50% margin, that's actually okay. It's not the end of the world. But I would like to advise you that if you have ambitions to sell globally, overseas, etc., that you want to be striving to achieve a 70% landed margin. This is what the likes of New Look, Forever New, all of the big fashion brands, that they would be striving to achieve. The greater the margin, obviously the greater the profit, but also if you're achieving a base margin of 70, now in your current pricing strategy, whatever stage you're at, this gives you then the ease to move into wholesale a lot easier because you've got more margin to give away, so to speak. So I'd encourage that you right now, line by line, enter all the products that you're looking at based on your competitive price points, what we just looked at here. Enter the price point that you think it's worth, that it can sell at to be competitive. Enter these prices. So this is either going to be an actual price or it's going to be a quote, an estimate, and calculate your landed margin. So as I mentioned, overall, you're striving for 70. So that is pretty much the goal. This is how you check if your price points are actually going to drive profit. And a tip, that every single individual item doesn't have to achieve 70. Overall, if your collection achieves 70, perfect. So some could be 76, some could be as little as 60. But overall, if your overall collection margin is 70, then that means you can afford to lose on a few because you're going to overachieve on others. So that's the goal. And to explain for those of you that are considering wholesale, the reason why I'm saying 70 is, let's say if you're selling to Zalando. Zalando can ask for up to 75% off your RRP as their take-home wholesale price. So in this scenario, if you deduct 70%, so you've sold it to Zalando for 80, you're only going to take home £24 because they're going to take home the 70% of that selling price. Therefore, if your product cost you 40 to make and you only then sold it to Zalando in wholesale for 24, you've made a loss of £16. So that's why you can see in the example below, when you achieve a landed margin of 70, with the exact same calculation, you take off a wholesale margin, you then would be just marginally profitable. So in this column here, 70% that I've used as an example is pretty high, and hopefully you'd agree a deal that's less than that. But this is the exact scenario, the exact workings I'm showing you that you need to now calculate and play around with to make sure that you get your price points, your retail prices correct now, even if you're not dealing with wholesale. You want to pretty much make sure that your landed margin is 70%, which will make you profitable in your direct to consumer business as much as in the future profitable with wholesale. So pretty much we've actually already completed step 4, which is good. But one thing I wanted to point out is within this calculation, we're not stripping out wages. We're pretty much looking at the cost of the goods as mentioned, to produce it, to ship it, to deliver it. So that's something that you're not taking into account, but also it's nothing that you should necessarily be looking at when you're looking at your profitability within the sales channel. So hopefully now you've got the confidence. I've shown you the top bar structure. I've talked over the cost, everything that you need to do to calculate if you're profitable based on the competitive pricing that you have proposed. So just one final piece of advice. I have seen this happen before. I have seen fashion brands that have just simply made up their price points. Trust me, it doesn't work. Making up your pricing, like how do you know that it's going to be competitive? How do you know it's going to be profitable? It simply is not the right way to do it. So I encourage you now that every season you rerun this exact same process that I've talked about, as well as every new market you go into and every new sales channel that you launch on. Getting the right pricing based on your competitors in that market is essential to ensure that your product sells and is actually attractive to customers, and also need to check that you're profitable. So alongside what I've talked about today, we also have loads of new content that comes out every single week on our blog, Fashion Insights. So topics we talk about that I think you'd find super interesting would be how to succeed in fashion wholesale. So within that, we talk through how to reach out to platforms, how to know what platform's right for you, how to launch into new markets. And alongside that, we also talk about broader topics of how to increase your sales. So that could be what emails you should be sending to customers, etc. So pretty much go check out Fashion Insights. There's loads of content every single week. So thanks so much for listening. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop me any comments beneath in the video. And yeah, thank you. We'll speak soon. Have a good day.